My name is Ursuline, and I'm 32 years old. I was staring at my phone in disbelief. The text from my parents was clear: need you to transfer $27,000 to Madison ASAP, family emergency. My hands were shaking. This wasn't the first time they'd asked me for money for my sister, but never this much. $27,000. Just like that. As the responsible one, I was always expected to bail Madison out. But this time was different. This time I decided to take control. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to find out what I did that completely changed my family dynamic forever. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in Phoenix, Arizona. On the surface, we looked like your typical middle-class family. My mother, Diana, was a part-time receptionist at a dental office, and my father, Frank, worked as a sales manager at a local furniture store. They weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable enough. For the first 8 years of my life, I was an only child. I remember those early years fondly. My parents attended my school events, praised my accomplishments, and seemed genuinely interested in my development. I was a bright child who loved reading and mathematics. My father would often boast about my academic achievements to his friends and colleagues. Everything changed when Madison was born. From the moment they brought her home from the hospital, it was clear that Madison was special in their eyes. She was a beautiful baby with curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes, while I had inherited my father's more ordinary brown hair and eyes. As shallow as it sounds, I sometimes wondered if her appearance was part of why they favored her so obviously from the start. "She's going to be something special," my mother would say, gazing adoringly at Madison. I can just tell. As Madison grew, my parents' favoritism became increasingly apparent. When she expressed interest in dance at age 4, they immediately enrolled her in the most expensive dance studio in our area. Meanwhile, when I asked to join an advanced mathematics program at school that required a modest fee, my mother sighed and said, "We need to be careful with our spending, Ursuline. Maybe next semester." There never seemed to be budget constraints when it came to Madison. By the time she was 10, she had private dance lessons, voice coaching, and acting classes. My parents spent thousands on costumes competition fees and travel expenses for her performances. "Your sister has real talent," my father explained when I questioned the disparity. "We need to nurture that. You're already so smart you don't need extra help." The message was clear. Madison's pursuits were investments, while mine were expenses. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a local bookstore. Initially, I was proud to earn my own money, but I quickly realized that unlike my friends who were saving for cars or fun experiences, I was saving for necessities like college application fees and school supplies. Madison, on the other hand, never worked a day during her teenage years. My parents insisted that she needed to focus on her craft and couldn't spare time for something as mundane as a part-time job. "Your sister is building her future through her performances," my mother would say dismissively whenever I brought up the unfairness. "We can't risk her injuring herself or getting too tired from some minimum wage job." I threw myself into academics hoping that scholarships would be my ticket to independence. I studied until midnight most nights, maintained a perfect GPA, and joined every academic club that might boost my college applications. The defining moment came during my senior year of high school. I had been saving for college since I started working, carefully setting aside a portion of every paycheck. Though my parents had never explicitly promised to help with my education, they had occasionally mentioned a college fund they had started when I was born. One evening, I overheard my parents discussing finances in hushed tones. "We'll have to use the rest of Ursuline's college money," my mother was saying. "Madison's private school tuition is due next week." "But that was the last of it," my father replied, sounding slightly concerned. "Shouldn't we at least tell Ursuline?" There was a pause before my mother responded. "She'll be fine. She's got those scholarship applications and she can take out loans like most kids do. Madison needs this specialized program if she's going to develop her talents properly." I stood frozen in the hallway, a cold realization washing over me. The money that had supposedly been set aside for my education had been systematically redirected to Madison over the years. I was on my own. That night I cried silently into my pillow, feeling betrayed and invisible. By morning, though, my sadness had hardened into resolve. If my parents wouldn't support me, I would find a way to succeed despite them. The only person who seemed to notice the unfair treatment was my grandfather, William. During his monthly visits, he would bring me books and quietly slip me $20 bills for school supplies. Once, after witnessing a particularly blatant example of favoritism during a family dinner, he found me alone in the backyard. "Your parents don't see what they're doing," he said gently, sitting beside me on the old swing set. "But I see you, Ursuline. You're going to go far in this world, and it's going to be because of your own strength. Don't let anyone dim your light." His words became a lifeline for me, a reminder that someone valued me for who I was. What I didn't know then was that Grandpa William was watching more closely than I realized, and his support would extend far beyond those small financial gifts and words of encouragement. As high school graduation approached, I had secured a partial scholarship to State University, but it would only cover about half of my tuition. When I shared this news at dinner, hoping for some acknowledgement or offer of help, my mother merely nodded and quickly turned the conversation to Madison's upcoming dance recital. The contrast couldn't have been more stark when Madison was accepted to a performing arts high school that required an optional donation of $5,000. My parents threw her a lavish party and proudly wrote the check without hesitation. The message was clear: Madison was the investment worth making. I was expected to figure things out on my own. My college years were a blur of lectures, late-night study sessions, and endless shifts at various jobs. I worked at the university library, waited tables on weekends, and took on freelance tutoring whenever I could fit it into my schedule. Every semester was a financial tightrope walk, calculating exactly how many hours I needed to work to cover what my loans and scholarship didn't. Meanwhile, my phone would light up with family photos showing Madison's latest performances or family vacations that happened to coincide with her competition schedules trips I was rarely invited to join under the assumption I was too busy with school to attend. During my sophomore year, I met Alyssa in an economics class. We bonded over our shared love of financial analysis and practical jokes on our rather dry professor. Unlike my high school friends who couldn't relate to my family situation, Alyssa immediately recognized the dynamic for what it was. "That's not normal, Ursuline," she said bluntly, after I casually mentioned having to skip a meal because my last $20 had gone to an unexpected textbook purchase. "Parents are supposed to help if they cannot drain you of resources while spoiling your sister." Her straightforward assessment was both validating and eye-opening. I had become so accustomed to the imbalance that I had normalized it. Alyssa helped me see that I deserved better and encouraged me to establish clearer boundaries with my family. It was also during college that I discovered my aptitude for finance and investments. What had started as a practical interest in managing my limited funds developed into a genuine passion. I found elegance in the logic of markets and satisfaction in watching careful investments grow. Professor Jenkins, my financial management teacher, took notice of my abilities and became an invaluable mentor. "You have an unusually clear-eyed approach to risk assessment," he told me after class one day. "Have you considered a career in investment advising?" Under his guidance, I secured an internship at a local financial firm during my junior year. The experience was transformative. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving financially, I was thriving in an environment that valued precisely the skills I possessed. Back home, Madison had started college at an expensive performing arts school on the East Coast. My parents had taken out a second mortgage to cover her tuition and housing in a luxury student apartment. I learned this not from them directly, but from a holiday card that mentioned how quiet the house was with Madison, living her dream in New York. The irony wasn't lost on me that my parents never visited me at State University, just a 2-hour drive from home, but frequently flew across the country to see Madison's performances. The first major financial request came during my senior year. Madison had dropped out of college after 2 expensive years, deciding that formal education was stifling her creativity. Instead, she wanted to start a small business selling handmade jewelry inspired by her dance experiences. My parents called me explaining that they had already contributed significantly, but needed another $3,000 to help her launch her website and initial inventory. "It's an investment opportunity," my mother explained, her voice bright with enthusiasm. "Madison has such a unique artistic vision. Once the business takes off, she'll pay everyone back." Against my better judgment and Alyssa's explicit advice, I transferred the money, nearly all of my carefully accumulated emergency fund. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a chance to prove I was supportive despite our history. The jewelry business lasted less than 6 months. The few pieces that sold went to family friends who had been guilted into purchases by my mother. Madison quickly lost interest when the business required actual work rather than just creative expression. The $3,000 vanished without a trace, and the promised repayment was never mentioned again. When I graduated with honors, only my grandfather William attended the ceremony. My parents sent a text that morning explaining that Madison had an unexpected audition for a small commercial that could be her big break. The audition apparently took precedence over watching their oldest daughter graduate near the top of her class. Professor Jenkins introduced me to several contacts in the industry, and I received 2 job offers before graduation. I accepted a position at Meridian Financial in Boston, as far from Arizona as I could reasonably go, while still advancing my career. The week before I left for Boston, Grandpa William invited me to lunch at his favorite diner. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You've done this all on your own, and that's something special." Then he reached into his pocket and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $5,000. "I've been setting aside a little each month since you started college," he explained. "I wanted to help, but I also wanted you to develop that independence that's going to serve you well throughout your life." I tried to refuse, but he was insistent. "This isn't charity, Ursuline. This is an investment in someone I believe in completely. The only thing I ask is that you use it to build your future, not to solve other people's problems." Something in his tone made me realize he understood exactly what had been happening in our family. This was his way of helping me break the cycle. "It's time to set some boundaries," he said gently. "You can love your family without being their bank." It was the last significant conversation we had before his health began to decline. Within 2 years, he would be gone, but his advice would continue to guide me through the challenges ahead. Boston represented a fresh start. My apartment was small, but entirely mine, and my position at Meridian Financial challenged me in all the right ways. I started as a junior analyst, spending long hours learning the intricacies of the investment world, and discovered I had a talent for identifying undervalued assets and emerging market trends. Over the next decade, I methodically built my career and financial stability. I lived well below my means, maintaining the frugal habits developed during college, even as my salary increased. By my 5th year in Boston, I had fully repaid my student loans, established a robust emergency fund, and begun building an investment portfolio focused on long-term growth. My relationship with my family settled into a distant but cordial routine. I called home once a month, exchanged obligatory holiday cards, and visited Arizona perhaps once a year. These interactions were superficial, my parents asking perfunctory questions about my job before launching into detailed updates about Madison's latest pursuits. Madison had cycled through several career aspirations since the failed jewelry business. There was a brief stint as a yoga instructor, followed by an attempt to become a social media influencer, and then a period where she claimed to be writing a memoir about her journey as an artist. None of these endeavors generated sustainable income. The financial requests continued, becoming a predictable pattern in our family dynamic. First came the car accident. Madison had been at fault driving while texting and lacked proper insurance coverage. My parents called explaining that she needed $5,000 for repairs and medical bills. "She's really learned her lesson this time," my father assured me, though his tone lacked conviction. Then there was Madison's whirlwind romance with Justin, a personal trainer she'd met at her gym. After dating for just 3 months, they decided to have an elaborate wedding. The request this time was for $8,000 to secure their dream venue before someone else booked it. "This is the one, Ursuline," my mother insisted. "Justin is really grounding her. This marriage will help her settle down." Perhaps the most frustrating was the $12,000 they asked for when Madison decided to launch another business, this time selling custom essential oil blends that she claimed could cure everything from anxiety to eczema. I expressed concerns about both the scientific claims and the business model, only to be told I was being negative and unsupportive. Each time I provided some money, though, never the full amount requested, and each time I received brief thanks followed by silence until the next crisis. There were never updates on the businesses, no repayments, not even acknowledgement of the previous assistance when new requests came. I met David at a financial advisors conference in Chicago. He was presenting a panel on ethical investing, and his thoughtful approach to balancing profit with social responsibility caught my attention. When I asked him a rather pointed question during the Q&A session, he smiled and invited me to continue the conversation over coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, which evolved into a long-distance relationship between Boston and Chicago where he worked. After 6 months of flights back and forth, David took a position with a firm in Boston, and our relationship deepened. Unlike previous boyfriends who couldn't understand my complicated family dynamics, David immediately recognized the unhealthy patterns. Having worked with many clients dealing with family financial entanglements, he had both professional insight and personal empathy. Financial abuse doesn't always look like someone stealing your credit card, he observed after witnessing a particularly tense phone call with my mother. Sometimes it's more subtle, creating dependencies, instilling guilt, establishing expectations that only flow in one direction. His perspective helped me see that my family's behavior wasn't just annoying or unfair, it was fundamentally manipulative. The breaking point came during a rare family visit when David and I flew to Arizona for Thanksgiving. Madison and Justin were there along with my parents. Within an hour of our arrival, the conversation had turned to Madison's latest financial troubles. "The landlord is being completely unreasonable," Madison complained, shooting me a meaningful look. "Just because we were late with the rent twice, he's threatening eviction." My mother jumped in immediately. "Ursuline, surely you could help them out. You're doing so well, and family helps family." David, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Actually, I think the best help might be setting up a budget plan. I'd be happy to share some resources." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees. "We don't need financial literacy lessons," Madison snapped. "We need actual support." "And what Ursuline provides isn't actual support," David asked mildly. An uncomfortable silence followed, broken only when my father abruptly changed the subject. Later that night, in the privacy of our hotel room, David gently suggested that I consider therapy to help navigate these family dynamics. "You've normalized something that isn't normal," he said. "And it's affecting you more than you realize." I resisted at first, but eventually found a therapist who specialized in family systems. Dr. Brennan helped me understand how my role as the responsible one had been weaponized against me, creating a sense of obligation that my family exploited. Through therapy, I developed a clear set of boundaries regarding financial support. I communicated these to my family in a carefully worded email. "I love you all and want to support you, but I need to establish some guidelines for financial assistance going forward. I will only consider helping in true emergencies with clear documentation of the need. Any money provided will be treated as a formal loan with repayment terms that we all agree to in writing." This is not because I don't care, but because I believe this approach is healthier for all of us in the long term. The response was predictably negative. My mother called it cold and businesslike, while Madison accused me of acting superior and forgetting where I came from. My father, as usual, said little, but implied his disappointment. Despite the pushback, I held firm to these boundaries for nearly 2 years. The requests didn't stop entirely, but they decreased in frequency and scale. When they did come, I calmly referenced my email and asked for the documentation I had mentioned. Most times the conversation ended there. I thought we had reached a new, if somewhat distant, equilibrium. I was wrong. The text arrived on a Sunday evening as David and I were discussing wedding venues. After 3 years together, we had recently gotten engaged and purchased our first home, a charming 2-bedroom condo in a historic Boston neighborhood. We had been careful with our finances, saving for both the wedding and home down payment, while maintaining our emergency funds and retirement contributions. "Need you to transfer $27,000 to Madison ASAP. Family emergency." I stared at my phone, my stomach dropping. $27,000 wasn't just a large sum. It was almost exactly the amount we had set aside for our modest wedding. "What's wrong?" David asked, noticing my expression. I showed him the text. "This is different. They've never asked for anything close to this amount before." "Are you going to call them?" he asked carefully, clearly, trying to respect my agency while also concerned. My hands were shaking slightly as I dialed my parents' number. My mother answered on the second ring. "Oh, thank goodness," she said without preamble. "Did you make the transfer yet?" "Mom, I need to understand what's happening first. What kind of emergency requires $27,000? She sighed as though my question was unreasonable. "Madison and Justin are about to lose their house. They've fallen behind on payments and the bank is threatening foreclosure. They need to catch up on the mortgage and pay some fees to stop the process." When did this start? How many payments have they missed? That's hardly relevant right now, Ursuline. The point is that they need help immediately. Madison is pregnant. Did you know that your niece or nephew could be homeless if you don't step up? The pregnancy news was a surprise, but I tried to stay focused. I understand this is serious, but I need more information. Have they explored options with their bank? There are often hardship programs. We don't have time for all that bureaucratic nonsense, my mother interrupted. The money needs to be in their account by tomorrow. You have it, Ursuline. We know you do. Actually, Mom, that money is allocated for my wedding. David and I have been saving. A wedding, she scoffed. You're going to prioritize a party over your sister's home, over your future niece or nephew. I thought we raised you better than that. The familiar guilt began to rise, but something else rose alongside it, anger. I need time to think about this, I said firmly. There isn't time Madison needs. I need time, I repeated, my voice sharper now. I'll call you back tomorrow. I ended the call before she could respond. Almost immediately, my phone pinged with a text from Madison. "I know Mom can be intense, but we really are desperate. I promise this is the last time I'll ever ask for anything. We'll pay you back every cent once Justin's personal training business takes off. Please, Ursie, I'm so scared for the baby." The use of my childhood nickname felt calculated, a deliberate tug on old heartstrings. David had been silent throughout the call, but now he spoke carefully. "What are you thinking?" "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to help, especially with a baby involved, but another part feels like this is just a larger version of the same pattern. And the timing right when we're planning our wedding. "Would it help to get more information?" he suggested, before making any decision. That night, I barely slept running calculations and scenarios in my head. If we postponed the wedding and used the savings, we could help Madison, but would delay our own plans significantly. If we tapped our emergency fund instead, we'd be financially vulnerable for months. By morning, I had made a decision not about whether to provide the money, but about how to proceed with the situation. I called my office and took a personal day, something I rarely did. This required my full attention. "Whatever you decide," David said as he left for work, "I'll support you. Just make sure it's really your decision, not one made from guilt or obligation." His words stayed with me as I began my investigation. I approached the situation like I would a potential investment, methodically gathering information before committing resources. First, I needed to verify the foreclosure claim. I called Madison and asked for her mortgage account information, explaining that I wanted to speak directly with the bank. She was reluctant, but eventually provided it after I made it clear this was a condition of my help. The conversation with the mortgage representative was illuminating. While Madison and Justin had been late with 2 payments earlier in the year, they had caught up and were currently current on their mortgage. There was no foreclosure process underway. This discovery left me confused and concerned. Why would my family claim an emergency that didn't exist? I needed to dig deeper. A quick review of Madison's social media accounts revealed posts from just the previous week showing off a brand new SUV with the caption, "New car for our growing family," and photos from a weekend getaway at an upscale desert resort. These were not the actions of someone facing imminent homelessness. I reached out to our mutual cousin Samantha, who lived near Madison, and had always been more balanced in her perspective on family matters. "I've been wondering if someone would finally catch on," Samantha said when I explained the situation. "Madison and Justin have been telling everyone they're investing in some cryptocurrency thing that Justin's gym buddy sold them on. They've been trying to get money from various family members, including my parents. They told my mom they needed help with medical bills for the pregnancy." The pieces were starting to come together, but I needed to hear it directly. I called Madison this time with a different approach. "I've been looking at options to help you," I began, intentionally vague, But I'm getting conflicting information about what the money is actually for. What do you mean? Her voice had an edge of defensiveness. Your mortgage is current according to the bank. A long pause followed. They must have made a mistake. We're definitely behind. Madison, I spoke with them directly using the account information you gave me. There's no foreclosure threat. Another pause, then a dramatic sigh. Fine. We're not behind yet, but we will be if we put the money into this investment opportunity. Justin's friend has insider knowledge about this new crypto coin that's about to explode in value. We could triple our money in months, but the minimum buy-in is $25,000. So you lied about the foreclosure and the urgency. We didn't exactly lie, she protested. We're preventing a future foreclosure by making smart investments now. Mom and Dad thought you'd be more likely to help if it seemed urgent. The casual admission of manipulation stunned me. You involved them in this deception? Oh, please. Madison's voice turned cold. Stop acting so superior. Some of us weren't handed the same advantages you had. Some of us are trying to find creative ways to get ahead. Advantages, I repeated incredulously. What advantages? You were always the smart one, the responsible one. Everything came easily to you. Nothing came easily to me, Madison. I worked multiple jobs through college. I took out loans. I built my career through hard work while you received consistent financial support from our parents. That's so typical, she snapped. You've always resented me for being their favorite. The blunt acknowledgement of what had always been tacitly understood hit me like a physical blow. You know what? Her voice turned venomous. Forget it. We don't need your charity. You sit in your perfect Boston life judging everyone else, but at least I have actual relationships with our parents. All you have is money. She hung up before I could respond. My phone rang again almost immediately, my parents. What did you say to your sister? My mother demanded without greeting. She's hysterical. I asked her about the foreclosure. I replied calmly. She admitted there isn't one. The money is for a cryptocurrency investment. Well, yes, but that's going to help them secure their future. What does it matter what the money is for if they need it? I took a deep breath. It matters because you all lied to me. You created a false emergency to manipulate me into giving up my wedding savings. Don't be so dramatic. My father's voice joined in. They had me on speaker. We just knew you'd be difficult about an investment, but you would help for a true need. So you decided to lie instead of being honest. We did what we had to do, my mother said defensively. Madison has a baby on the way. This investment could secure their future. Or it could be a scam that cost them everything, I countered. Has anyone researched this opportunity, spoken with a legitimate financial advisor? Cryptocurrency is highly volatile, and these insider tips are often fraudulent. There you go again, my mother sighed. Always thinking you know better than everyone else because of your fancy job. The conversation continued in circles with my parents, defending the deception as necessary and minimizing my concerns. I finally ended the call, when it became clear we were making no progress. I sat in silence afterward, processing the revelations. The family dynamics had always been unbalanced, but this deliberate manipulation felt like a new low. I realized I needed time to consider my response carefully. I scheduled appointments with both my financial advisor and therapist for the following day, seeking professional guidance before making any decisions. Then I called David and filled him in on my discoveries. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. What are you thinking of doing? I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I know I'm not giving them the $27,000. That much is clear. That night, I reviewed our family's financial history, documenting the pattern of requests and support that had characterized our relationship for years. The total was sobering, nearly $40,000 over the past decade, none of which had ever been repaid. As I stared at the numbers, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging. This wasn't just about money. It was about recognizing and breaking a dysfunctional pattern that had defined my family relationships for too long. I began drafting an alternative approach that addressed the real issues rather than simply throwing money at symptoms. By morning, I had a plan. I requested an in-person family meeting at my parents' home the following weekend. Though initially resistant to the delay, they eventually agreed when I made it clear this was my only offer of assistance. David offered to accompany me, but I decided this was something I needed to handle alone. When I arrived at my parents' house that Saturday, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Madison and Justin sat close together on the couch, while my parents occupied their usual chairs. All eyes followed me as I took a seat across from them. "Thank you for meeting with me," I began, determined to maintain composure, despite the hostility radiating from Madison. "I've given a lot of thought to the situation." "And," my mother prompted impatiently, "have you brought the check?" "I haven't brought a check," I said calmly, "because I don't believe giving you $27,000 is the right solution here." Madison made a sound of disgust. "I told you she'd back out. She doesn't care about anyone but herself." "That's not fair or accurate," I countered. "I care deeply about all of you, which is why I've prepared an alternative proposal." I removed a folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. "Based on what I've learned, there is no mortgage emergency. The money was actually intended for a cryptocurrency investment that Justin heard about from a gym acquaintance. Is that correct?" Justin shifted uncomfortably, but nodded. "I've done some research on the specific cryptocurrency being promoted," I continued. "It bears all the hallmarks of what's called a pump and dump scheme, where early investors hype up a worthless token recruit. New investors then sell their holdings once the price rises, leaving latecomers with worthless digital assets." "You don't know that," Justin protested weakly. "I consulted with several colleagues who specialize in cryptocurrency markets," I replied. "They all identified red flags consistent with fraudulent schemes. At minimum, it's an extremely high-risk investment, unsuitable for someone in your financial situation, especially with a baby on the way." My mother interrupted. "So you're just refusing to help after everything we've done for you?" The familiar guilt tactic washed over me without sticking. "Actually, I am offering help, but not in the form of cash. I'm proposing a family financial intervention." I opened the folder and removed several documents. "Instead of $27,000 cash, I'm offering the following. First, I will pay for 6 months of financial counseling with a respected advisor who specializes in family finances and financial recovery. This would be for Madison and Justin, but I'd also cover sessions for you both." I nodded to my parents. "If you're willing." No one spoke, so I continued. "Second, I've researched legitimate debt consolidation options that could help if there are existing obligations causing strain. I would help facilitate this process and cover the associated fees. Third, instead of funding a speculative investment, I'm willing to establish a college fund for your baby that would grow over time. This would be structured so the money can only be used for educational purposes. Finally, I'm offering to meet monthly via video call to help you develop and stick to a budget plan based on the counselor's recommendations." I looked around at their faces, trying to gauge reactions. Madison looked stunned. Justin seemed thoughtful, and my parents appeared conflicted. "What I will not do," I added firmly, "is transfer cash without accountability, especially for a high-risk investment based on questionable advice. That wouldn't be helping. It would be enabling further financial instability." Madison was the first to respond, her face flushing with anger. "So you're saying we're too stupid to handle our own money, that we need your supervision?" "I'm saying that financial management is a skill that takes time to develop. I had to learn it too, mostly on my own." "This is insulting," my mother declared. "Your sister needs actual help, not lectures and conditions." "Mom, the pattern isn't working," I said gently. "How many times have we done this? A crisis emerges, money changes hands, and then another crisis follows. Nothing improves long term." "So you're punishing Madison for past issues?" my father asked. "No, I'm trying to address the root cause rather than the symptoms. I want Madison and Justin and their baby to have financial stability, not just a temporary fix." Madison stood abruptly. "I don't need your charity or your judgment. We'll figure this out ourselves." "Madison, wait," Justin said, surprising everyone. "Maybe we should listen." "Are you serious right now?" She glared at him. "You're taking her side." "I'm not taking sides," he replied, looking uncomfortable but determined. "But we're about to have a baby. Maybe we should at least consider what she's saying about the crypto thing. My buddy Terry isn't exactly the most reliable guy." Madison stared at him in disbelief before turning back to me. "You've always been jealous of me, you know that. Just because Mom and Dad love me more. They always have, and you can't stand it." The blunt statement hung in the air. My parents didn't contradict her, their silence a tacit confirmation. Madison, I said quietly, this isn't about jealousy or competition. It's about breaking a cycle that's harmful to everyone, including you. Save it, she snapped, grabbing her purse. Come on, Justin, we're leaving. Justin hesitated, glancing between Madison and me. At least take her materials, he said, reaching for the folder. Madison stormed out without waiting for him. After an awkward moment, Justin took the folder, murmured a quiet, "Thank you," and followed his wife. Left alone with my parents, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. You really couldn't just help your sister this once? My mother finally asked, but her tone lacked its usual conviction. I've helped many times before, I reminded her gently. And I'm offering help now, just not in a way that perpetuates the problem. My father uncharacteristically spoke up. The college fund idea isn't bad. My mother shot him a look of betrayal. What it's not, he defended. The baby should have some opportunities. I sensed an opening. Can I ask you both something directly? Are you in financial trouble yourselves? They exchanged a glance, and I knew I'd hit upon something significant. We've been helping Madison and Justin more than we let on, my father admitted. The second mortgage on the house, some credit card debt. Our retirement accounts aren't where they should be at our age. Frank, my mother hissed. Diana, she deserves the truth for once, he replied with unexpected firmness. We're not doing anyone favors by hiding things. He turned to me. Your financial counselor idea. Would that be available to us too? Of course, I said, surprised and touched by his vulnerability. That's part of my offer. We don't need charity, my mother insisted, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. It's not charity, Mom. It's family support, the kind that leads to long-term stability rather than temporary fixes. I left contact information for the financial counselor, along with a brochure explaining their family approach to financial wellness. As I prepared to leave, my father walked me to the door. She won't admit it, he said quietly, referring to my mother. But we're proud of what you've built for yourself. I'm sorry we weren't more supportive. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that, Dad. That evening, as I drove to my hotel, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Justin. I wanted to call without Madison knowing. He began awkwardly. Things are worse than you know. We have credit card debt, medical bills from early pregnancy complications. The crypto thing was a desperate attempt to find a quick solution. I suspected as much, I replied. Your offer, is it still available? The counseling part at least? Of course, all of it is still available. I need to work on Madison, but I think she'll come around when she calms down. The baby has her scared even though she won't admit it. Tell her I'm here when she's ready, I said. No judgment, just support in finding a sustainable solution. As I ended the call, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, sadness for the past patterns, but cautious hope that perhaps this crisis could become a turning point for all of us. The 2 weeks following the family confrontation passed in silence. No calls from my parents, no texts from Madison. I returned to Boston and resumed wedding planning with David, though the family situation remained a weight on my mind. Do you think they'll come around? David asked one evening as we compared venue options. I don't know, I admitted. This is the longest we've gone without communication. I hope they're at least considering the offer. Then came the unexpected knock at our door on a Tuesday evening. When I opened it, Justin stood awkwardly in the hallway alone. Justin, what are you doing in Boston? I had a personal training certification workshop here, he explained, but that's not really why I came. Can I come in? I need to talk to you about everything. Over coffee at our kitchen table, Justin revealed the full extent of their financial situation. Madison had developed a shopping addiction during her early pregnancy, using online retail therapy to manage her anxiety about becoming a mother. They had maxed out 3 credit cards and taken cash advances on 2 more. The new SUV was leased with money borrowed from Justin's parents, who were now also asking for repayment. The crypto thing was my fault, he admitted. I was desperate and not thinking clearly. After your visit, I did some research. You were right, it had all the signs of a scam. How is Madison handling everything? I asked. He sighed heavily. She's struggling. The pregnancy hormones aren't helping. But she agreed to let me come talk to you. That's a big step for her pride. And the financial counseling. That's partly why I'm here. We'd like to take you up on that offer if it's still open. The whole package, actually. Relief washed over me. Of course it is. I can make the arrangements as soon as you're ready. There's something else, Justin added hesitantly. Madison would never admit this, but I think she needs more than financial help. Her spending seems compulsive, like she can't stop even when she knows it's harmful. I nodded. That sounds like it could be a shopping addiction. The financial counselor I had in mind actually specializes in the emotional aspects of money management, including addictive behaviors. They can help with that too, or refer to someone who can. Justin's shoulders relaxed visibly. That would be amazing. I didn't know how to bring it up with her. We spent the next hour making concrete plans. I contacted the financial therapy practice I had researched and arranged an initial consultation for the following week. Justin provided their current financial information, so I could help the counselor prepare for their situation. The progress with Justin and Madison was encouraging, but my parents remained a question mark until 3 days later when my father called. Your mother and I have been talking, he began without preamble. We'd like to try that financial counseling too, separately from Madison and Justin if that's possible. Of course, I agreed, surprised but pleased. Can I ask what changed your minds? There was a pause before he answered. We looked at our retirement accounts. It's worse than we thought. We've been supporting Madison for so long that we've neglected our own future. The truth is, we're scared. The vulnerability in his voice was new and touching. The counselor can help with that, Dad. They're very good at creating recovery plans even when the starting point is challenging. There's something else, he added hesitantly. Your mother won't say this, but we're sorry. We haven't been fair to you over the years. The simple acknowledgement meant more than he could know. The next 6 months were a gradual process of healing and restructuring. Madison attended her first financial therapy session reluctantly, but continued to go weekly. My parents worked with a separate counselor who specialized in retirement planning and family dynamics. I participated in monthly family financial meetings via video call, where we tracked progress and addressed challenges. There were setbacks. Madison had a significant relapse with online shopping during her 7th month of pregnancy, and my mother initially resisted the budget constraints recommended by their advisor. But the overall trajectory was positive. Perhaps the most significant change was in our communication patterns. Facilitated by the professional counselors, we began to discuss money openly and honestly, without the manipulation and guilt that had characterized our previous interactions. Madison gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Emily in the fall. When she called to share the news, there was a warmth in her voice I hadn't heard in years. We'd like you to be Emily's godmother, she said tentatively. If you want to. I'd be honored, I replied, tears springing to my eyes. And about the college fund you offered. Is that still an option? Absolutely. I've actually already set it up. I was just waiting for Emily to arrive so I could finalize the paperwork with her name. Thank you, Madison said softly. Not just for the money, but for, you know, not giving up on us when it would have been easier to just write a check and walk away. 1 year after the initial confrontation, we gathered for a family dinner during my and David's visit to Arizona. Our wedding had taken place 3 months earlier, a joyful celebration attended by my entire family, including Madison and Justin with baby Emily. Over dessert, my father raised his glass in a toast. To Ursuline and David, who not only built their own beautiful life, but helped us rebuild ours. Madison added, and to financial sobriety, 6 months clean from unnecessary shopping. We all laughed, but the accomplishment was real and worth celebrating. 2 years later, the transformation in our family dynamic was remarkable. My parents had downsized to a more manageable home and were building their retirement savings. Madison had discovered a genuine talent for budget coaching and was building a small business helping other young mothers manage household finances. Justin's personal training practice was thriving with a specialty in postnatal fitness. Drawing from our family experience, I started a financial literacy blog sharing lessons about family financial dynamics and healing from financial dysfunction. To my surprise, it quickly gained a following and led to speaking engagements at financial wellness conferences. During one such conference, I received a text from Madison with a photo of Emily proudly displaying a piggy bank. The caption read, "Teaching her early just like her Aunt Ursuline would want." The journey from that urgent text demanding $27,000 to our current healthy relationship had been challenging but profoundly rewarding. By refusing to enable financial dysfunction and instead offering real substantive help, I had not only protected my own financial well-being, but contributed to genuine healing in my family. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have sent the money or taken a stand like I did? Family financial dynamics can be so complicated, and I'd love to hear your experiences. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about setting healthy boundaries and building financial independence. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that sometimes the most caring response isn't the easiest one.